Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Comics Evolve, where we discuss all things around comics media culture with your hosts, Andy, Jarian, and Alex.
Welcome to Comics Evolve with myself, Andy Stead.
And I'm Jarian Gibson.
And I'm Alex Stroud.
We have got an explosive episode coming for you today, guys. We are going to be talking about Secret Invasion episode 4. Lots of big things happen in that episode. But before we get started, Alex, how are you?
Good. Wish I had something exciting that I bought this week, but I did not buy anything exciting this week, unfortunately. So
at least your wallet and your bank account will thank you for it.
Yeah. I've been going through, like, I have a closet of collectibles, and I just keep finding stuff in there that I forget that I had. And the other day, I found 2 piles of Iron Man action figures that I've had for 10 years, and I was like, oh wow, I completely forgot all about these. So and
that's as good as having something new, finding something you didn't realize you had.
That is true, I suppose. That is true. So.
Jarian, how are you?
Doing all right. Had some storms come through, so we got some power flickering going on, and since Friday, half my driveway is full of trees that we had to clean up that were down. So a lot of people without power still. So, one of those fun weekends of the storms in the Midwest United States.
Is everyone safe though?
Yeah, everyone's good. So
there you go. Then that's all we can ask for at this stage, I guess. I've not really been up to anything great apart from I did watch Everything Everywhere
all at once,
all the time, all at once. Yeah, I did watch that the other night. And have you guys seen it?
Not yet. It's on my list.
Okay, it's interesting. It's quite freaky, and I've always had this I've always find a lot of Asian cinema a bit strange. Anyway, there's just the vibe from it, and I'm not saying it's bad. It's just it's unfamiliar, So you kind of get that. It's just a strange vibe. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's something like, The Raid or Old Boy or whatever it is. They've all sort of given me that strange vibe. So it still continues to give me that strange vibe. But I think there's some really great multiversal sort of explanations and scenes in there that kind of, I think, make it very clear to understand, what goes on. It does go a bit crazy towards the end, but it's good. It's a fun movie. Great visuals in there, and the cast is great. So yeah, it's worth watching. Awesome. Shall we get cracking? We're going to be talking about, as we said, we're going to talk about Secret Invasion, episode 4. A lot happened, so I suppose we better get started. Really. Where do we want to start? I'd like
the news first. Secret Invasion news, or get into?
Yeah, well, throw some Secret Invasion news at us, Jarian. Let's go.
So, it reportedly has a $212 million budget. This is pretty much roughly the same as the first Avengers film.
Whoa.
Okay.
That is a lot.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised. We're talking about episode 4, so based on that action sequence, I'm not surprised. I've seen some reports this week about how they filmed it and that they used lots of practical effects and things like that, and so that doesn't surprise me. That was pretty high production value, that scene. Mm-hmm. So it's not surprising that it cost a lot of money.
Other than the AI intro, the show has pretty much feels it's a 6-hour show basically, so 6-hour movie, and it has that Winter Soldier, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., even some of the spy stuff that we've seen, Black Widow feel to it. So I'm not surprised it has a big budget.
And I'm going to be honest with you guys. I don't really think we've seen the depth of that budget really yet. We've got 2 more episodes to come. And I really feel with them just kind of getting into the Super Skrulls, showing a little bit of their powers, I feel like it's going to be one of those things where we'll see that probably be flushed out a little bit more in the next couple episodes. And that budget's really going to come into play, I feel a lot more.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say there's a lot of stuff. There's not a lot of stuff now, if I remember rightly, from the trailers that we haven't seen action-wise.
Mm-hmm.
So what's going to happen in these last 2 episodes action-wise? Like you said, there we go. They might flesh out some of that budget. Sorry, Joe.
No, you're fine. You're good. We're same page.
Oh, good. I was going to say one more thing on the budget.
Go ahead.
The cast.
Yep.
I mean, let's face it.
Expensive cast.
It is. You've got 4 or 5 huge players in there, huge players that are all I mean, yes, okay, I know the show's about Nick Fury mainly. He's probably spent more time on screen than anybody else. But, you know, Emilia Clarke spent a lot of time on screen. So has Ben Mendelsohn. So has Don Cheadle. Olivia Colman's there. She spent a bit of time on screen. I can't imagine Kingsley Ben-Adir is cheap. You know, I know he's a new up and coming, but he's still, you know, he's still a great actor. So there's lots of high end actors in there with I should imagine demanding big wages.
And who knows if we'll get a cameo at the end, post credits. You know, I don't expect a big cameo in episode 5 or 6 unless we get something in a post credit that possibly sets up either Armor Wars or the Marvels.
Yeah. Plus we had Colby Smulders for the first episode too. You know, so another pretty big names.
Dermot, I always say his name. The president.
And Martin Freeman as well.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And it just got really bright.
Yes,
where you're at.
Somebody turned the light on. Hopefully they'll turn that light off when they leave that.
Turn off that light.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say. There you go, light. He heard me.
Don Cheadle did talk about being a Skrull on the reveal. It's fun to fold that in and know that's what's happening underneath all of these Rhodey scenes. Rhodes is not who he appears to be. And then Kevin Feige made comments on Rhodey being a Skrull. We need to have a character that one would not expect to be a Skrull, which we all thought he was the prime candidate to be a Skrull in this series. Don Cheadle was on board for this reveal of playing and revealing another side of Rhodey and revealing that, Rhodey has been a Skrull. When we have amazing actors like Don that have been with us for so many years, we very much treat them as partners in the creative collaboration. It's very early. It was the very early days when we pitched this concept to Don, and he very much was into it and being able to play with different sides of Rhodey that we haven't seen before. Feige didn't exactly reveal how long that Rhodey's been a character in disguise, but he teased that fans will come to understand exactly how long Rhodey's been a Skrull, before hinting that Rhodes has been a Skrull in some of his previous MCU appearances. They also said, we like the idea of fans going back and watching some of the other appearances of Rhodey and realizing that wasn't him. So to me, the word "some" says like, were they actually working together? You know, in the one episode he says they knew about Skrulls for 15 years. So has Rhodey been off on other missions and a Skrull has stepped in at times to cover for Rhodey? Have they been using Skrulls in the government? In this Skrull, with everything going on, finally they're getting upset with not having a homeworld, with Fury breaking his promise, that this Skrull went rogue. So that's interesting that some of the time he was a Skrull and sometimes he wasn't.
Well, and another interesting thing too isn't the timeline right now, like, aren't we in 2025 in Secret Invasion? So 15 years ago would be around when Iron Man 2 was made, when Don Cheadle first made his appearance. So, like, there's kind of like a little irony, I feel like, there, that maybe that is going to tie into something going all the way back to, like, Iron Man 2.
So I actually pinged one of the scoopers about this on social media. I was like, hey, so it'd be a trip if when they did a switch out from Terrence Howard to Don Cheadle, that's when he did a Skrull. And he goes, no, he hasn't been a Skrull that long in the MCU. And then I followed up and said, you know, it's going to be, Rhodey's going to go be pissed off when he wakes up to find out Tony Stark is dead if he was a Skrull in game. And he kind of gave me this weird answer. So it feels like that in game he definitely was a Skrull. At least, you know, maybe did he get switched out between Infinity War and in game? Because remember, if it was Infinity War and in game switch out, remember Rhodey was off doing missions, you know, flying up for Clint, doing other things. So was it during that time that he got switched out during Infinity War when things were in chaos and he was off kind of on his own doing stuff? Or like I said, have they been using a Skrull in and out as Rhodey for a while? The other plausible thing could be is that when Rhodey got hurt in Civil War, was that a good time to swap him out? Mm-hmm. So, and Jimmy Smith here in the chat, and as soon as I said that, maybe from his accident onwards, and he's referencing Civil War 2 as well. So when we find out, it'll be interesting to see how long Rhodey has been a Skrull and when he has been a Skrull.
I mean, I feel like in Civil War, when he was knocked out, when he took that nasty fall, he probably would have turned back into a Skrull, right? If he was a Skrull.
I'm saying after, yeah, in the hospital, yeah.
So I'm saying it's at least got to be probably from that point forward, so I'm agreeing with you.
I'm gonna say it was a lot later than that. I'm gonna say it was after Endgame and before Winter Soldier, and it was the scene, the Falcon and Winter Soldier. It was the scene in there that he was a Skrull there, I reckon.
When he was talking to Sam at the ceremony.
Yeah, I just think that his reaction at Tony's funeral was too genuine for him to not care for that that being to not care for Tony. It was too genuine. His reaction at the end. I don't know. I don't think they'll go that far back. I think Falcon and Winter Soldier would be perfect. In fact, if anything, I should imagine that's exactly why they put him in there, so that they could turn around. Because really and truly, he didn't really need to be in that project. It wouldn't have made any difference if he wasn't. So I can imagine they've sort of put him in there so that they can then turn around and say, we put him in this project. Like, he was a Skrull when you saw him there, and you're like, oh wow, amazing. But yeah, I don't think it goes back much further than that. Personally.
It'd be a trip though if they were working together and that his counterpart finally decided to go rogue. Yeah, in Secret Invasion. So
that's a lot different. I mean, having said that, might as well elaborate on that a little bit now. It seemed like a female to me. It seemed like a female Skrull. So that's interesting. What I will say is it got the Rhodey mannerisms down, really well. So that was quite cool. But I think that it's interesting that it's a female. I wonder if that's a relevant female Skrull or whether it's just anybody. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and Jimmy Smith here from the chat via Facebook says that plays into my theory. He's the same Skrull as Sharon, because we know that Sharon was acting weird too in Falcon and Winter Soldier as well, with her being the power broke and all that stuff. That's a good shout out there, Jamie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't know why, but like at first, like when I saw like Rhodey was the female Skrull, I was like, oh, is that Soren? Is that Soren? Yeah, I was like, man, that would be so crazy, because then we see what happens to Talos at the end of this episode, and I feel like if that is Soren, that's going to be like a weird kind of like awakening moment where it's like, oh, really, Gravik? Like you just did this, So that might kind of change that point of view for if that is Soren,
Now, Samuel Jackson did talk about the finale a little bit, the last piece of news for Secret Invasion. I hope not, because that feels like a scene stealer. It feels like somebody's chewing up the scenery if one episode sticks out. I hope that it's really a smooth arc across 6 episodes and that people are constantly surprised and never pulled out of the story. And I think the series is effective that way. I hope you're always surprised. So it doesn't sound like, well, Jackson hopes that the finale is not a big thing. So it sounds like he wants to keep the consistent tone across all the episodes. But with that, I just want to say, I want to see more of Samuel L. Jackson and Don Cheadle on screen again. Their scenes together, from when he fired Fury to this one saying, hey, you know what? You stand down, I'm going to expose this video that, of you killing Maria Hill. And just the whole thing, that back and forth, I want to see more of it. I'm all for it.
Well, I love how both of them are so upfront. So, like, he says, what are you going to poison me with this? And he's like, no, it's got a tracer in it. And then laughs, and it actually has a tracer in it, and then, Don Cheadle is just like, hey, like, we've got this video. Like, I'm just going to blackmail you, and you'll do exactly as I say. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think that they've had some great moments in the show. Definitely, probably some of the best, I think.
Do you think that? Go ahead, Eddie.
I was just going to say that there's been the dialogue between people has been superb, been absolutely superb. I mean, while we're talking about dialogue between 2 characters, the dialogue between Fury and his wife, that scene was brilliant, absolutely just top quality. Like, in the end, the way they reference back to moments from their past, and I just think it was quality. And again, I know it's Samuel Jackson, which obviously then brings it to the front of the mind, but I just keep getting lots of Pulp Fiction vibes. These sharp conversations between people. In Pulp Fiction, you get a lot of that. There's just 2 people talking to each other for 5 minutes. A lot. It happens a lot in that movie for different characters, and it happens a lot in this show as well. You see a lot of people doing this. There's 2 people talking back and forward and exchanging quips, and I think it's really, really good. It's keeping me really entertained, and it just goes to show that you don't need explosions and people flying around and blowing things up to keep you entertained. Or for me, anyway, at least I suppose some people want that. I guess.
Yeah. I'll just say on the Rhodey thing. Do you think that this show we've kind of seen both Rhodey, Skrull and non-Skrull? Because there's times in the show that it's thrown me off with Rhodey that it seems like him sometimes. Other times you can definitely tell the mannerisms and that kind of stuff are definitely off. And so I wonder if we're seeing back and forth. Like, for example, we first saw Rhodey in the U.S. with the president. Was that the real Rhodey? And then that maybe the Skrull is the one that's over in Europe right now, doing the things, that kind of stuff. It almost feels like there's like this Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde type thing with Rhodey and the Skrull thing, where times it does seem like him, other times it doesn't seem like him at all.
It's
Sometimes too, I almost feel it is this Skrull Rhodey, a double agent, is going to end up crossing Gravik in the end. Like, it actually has been working with Fury the whole time, but has made to be seen that he's working with Gravik as well, kind of similar to Gaia, the role in this whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, that would be interesting if, like, that Skrull was a body double for Rhodey and is, like, out there doing, like, foreign policy stuff while real Rhodey is actually just sitting in Washington, D.C., not doing anything. Like, nobody knows that he's there. Everybody thinks he's, like, somewhere over there. That would be an awesome thing, I think, if they did something like that,
That was kind of my theory on Fury, that Fury was still up in Saber. And then the Fury that we're watching is a Skrull that the real Fury has sent to Earth to do all this work for him. But a little bit, I mean, we've already seen that happen, haven't we? A little bit like what happened in Far From
Home.
Yes, exactly what he did there. He sent Talos to be him down on Earth. So that's kind of what I was. So having said that, now that he's already done it, I don't know whether he'd do it again. But anyway, I think that talking about Gaia, obviously, I mean, I think it was pretty obvious that she wasn't going to be dead. Like you said last week, they're not bringing Emilia Clarke in for 20 minutes, are they?
I don't know. There's some angst out there about her that people saying they missed the perfect opportunity to bring Abigail Brand in to show us for the rest of the time in the MCU the person that she switched out for, because obviously there's a shell out there with the real human body out there. So people were kind of upset that Gaia is still alive and that we're not getting Abigail Brand or some kind of backstory on her shell.
I still think we will. I think that's exactly where she's got to find out that. Seemingly we'll talk about Talos in a moment, but she's got to find out what happened to Talos. That's going to really push her over the edge and get her to side with Fury against Gravik, and she's going to be Fury's, right-hand woman, and she'll assume a human identity as Abigail Brand, whether that's a made-up thing, maybe that's the person she simmed, maybe the person she simmed is dead. I don't think
kind of like Priscilla. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like Priscilla. Yeah, she's already just explained it, how that system works, So I don't think we've missed the opportunity to have Abigail Brand, and I can't for one moment imagine that they're going to just get Emilia Clarke in for even if it's just these 6 episodes. She's in this for the long haul, I think.
Yeah, we should see if we see her in the Marvels or some kind of tie to her for the Marvels too as well.
Yeah, well, I think we will see it. I think if that theory comes true that she becomes Abigail Brand, we'll see her on Saber, even if it's only for 10 minutes,
I think that scene where she's sitting there and she's talking to Talos and she's talking about, what's your plan? Like, what are you planning on doing? Like, how do we win this? And he's like, we're going to stomp out this squabble with the other Skrulls. And then after we do that, I'm going to go to the president of the United States and I'm going to make an argument for us. And, he'll see what we've done and he'll help us, like, is kind of like his attitude to her. And she's basically like, so you have no plan. And then I love it because that scene kind of foreshadows later on in the episode, because what is Talos doing? He's the one that literally is like, turning back into a Skrull, dying, beating on the window of the motorcade that's bulletproof, trying to break it, and just keeps on beating it and beating and beating it. And he literally dies trying to save the president. So it's like he's almost foreshadowing that moment later on in the episode where he's like, hey, I'm trying to show him that we're trying to stop this because we're trying to make a sacrifice to help them. And he helps Fury save the president though.
Yep. And also too, Fury tells him as well, saying, look, hey, he's on our side because they're getting ready to shoot him. the military that's trying to protect the president. He's like, no, he's with me.
Yeah.
Type of thing. So yeah.
Yeah.
Fury's so in that moment, talking about that moment, and Fury's reaction to Talos being shot just goes to show that, you know, he's got feelings for the guy. You know, he's a good friend, and then getting stabbed and seemingly dead. I mean, how many times can they kill somebody in the show and then not actually have to be actually dead? You know.
What confused me in that moment was Gravik just like turns and leaves, and in that moment, I think an extra 15 seconds he could have wiped the floor with everybody. He could have
Yeah.
and it just seemed like a very odd moment for him to be like, okay, now I'm gonna turn and run. And I was like, you know, you literally came here to do this, and Fury's just like got the president sitting in the car, and Fury's just standing there, and Fury jumps in the car and leaves, and he jumps on a motorcycle and leaves, and I was like, okay, that's kind of weird, you know.
Do you think their plan kind of got messed up, didn't it? Because their plan was to attack, to pretend to be Russians and attack the president and the motorcade, and then obviously get it blamed on the Russians. But then with Fury turning up and Talos turning up, it kind of, you know, it's going to be explained that that's not the case at all. So maybe Gravik just realised that it doesn't really matter what happens now. I'm going to get out of here and we'll regroup and we'll have another idea, you know, because that idea now is gone. I don't know.
What's really going to be interesting is I would assume that all these, you know, people that were being impersonated by Skrulls that were pretending to be Russians that were attacking are probably now laying their dead as Skrulls.
Yeah.
So like, you know, now not only do they know that, but like they know that like they're in places like Chernobyl and stuff, which is in Russia, which makes sense because they're trying to impersonate Russians here. So I feel like maybe this is going to point people in the direction of like, hey, maybe we can start to figure out where they're at. You know, like this would make sense. Who knows? Maybe not. So
it also be interesting to see too, with that line about Rhodey saying that they've known for 15 years about Skrulls. If we come back saying about the government, you know, maybe some conversation between the president and Fury about that whole Skrull thing and them knowing for a while, but not really divulging to Fury that they knew, because I don't think Fury told them.
But it also didn't seem like the way that Rhodey was talking about the president, it was almost like, you know, he can't wipe his own ass. So it was almost like the president doesn't really know what's going on, and everybody else does. So the president was just a puppet almost. So I don't know whether that might be the case, and we might find that out with Fury. Fury might be talking to the president, and he might say, "What the hell's going on? Who's the green guy?" You know. I know that he was unconscious, but do you know who are Skrulls? I don't know what Skrulls are. I've never heard of them before. You know. But there's another point here to make. Again, we saw it in the trailer. We saw Fury shoot down the president's chopper.
I would have had my notes.
Yeah, was that what you was going to say?
Yeah.
It goes to show, doesn't it? I mean, I know we've spoken about it before. The biggest one, you know, the Hulk in Infinity War and things like that. But are we right? Am I right in thinking that there was a policy brought in a little while ago where they?
But this wasn't the same thing as the Hulk thing, though. This is the same thing.
No, this wasn't.
This was more Yeah, exactly.
But it was quite deceiving, wasn't it? Because he did look like Samuel Jackson was shooting down a helicopter with the president.
Yeah,
it just was not the case at all. But wasn't there a bill brought in or a policy brought in where they couldn't deceive people? You know, could this be deception?
I don't think this one is as much as the Infinity War Hulk, because that scene didn't make the movie.
No.
The stuff we saw in the trailer was actually in the show. It's just the way they edited it, the trailer. It made it seem like he was shooting down a helicopter with the president in it. But what it was the president's motorcade in his car that was rolling, not a helicopter going down. So unless there's something coming up later on where maybe Gravik impersonates the president or the Scrody Skrull, I don't know. But I don't think it's the same thing as putting something there and blatantly not having it in the product. Jimmy Smith here. Go ahead, Alex, read this.
I was just going to say my jaw dropped when the choppers come in and all of a sudden like anti-missile
come out.
Yeah. Boom. I was like, oh, wow. I was not expecting that. It just takes one of the choppers down instantly. Like, wow.
Those vehicles are unbelievable, though, aren't they? That they've got that would not surprise me if they're in real life. That's actually a thing. My uncle has got his own sort of fabrication business and things like this, and he works on a lot of really, really high end sort of Rolls Royces and Mercedes and Bentleys and things like this, and you know, doing all the body work on them. and he's had some things in there that he said that, you know, you sort of said, we've had, you know, this Bentley that is basically a tank. It's basically a tank, but the car, you know, it's bomb proof, it's like bulletproof, it's, you know, missile proof. You know, you're not going to get anything through this thing, you know.
So from via Facebook from Jimmy Smith here, I'll get to this next too as well. Something has to happen with the president, though, surely, with Ross being the president in Brave New World. So this is my thinking: either the president does get taken out, or the president's ineptitude in this whole thing leads to Ross rising up to the ranks, or there's some kind of election that happens because he's like, look, I knew about scrolls, because Ross come on and say, look, I knew about scrolls. Why didn't the president know? Yeah. So
that's it.
That
Exactly
campaign could be that. Yeah, it could be that. Or the president could be like, you know what? I'm too, you know, Danny Glover, I'm too old for this mess, you know, and step down, and maybe that's how Ross looks. We don't know who the vice president is right now. We don't know the line of succession right now. You know, we don't know any of that. We know that Rhodey's a special envoy for the president. He's in his cabinet, but we don't know exactly what he's doing in his cabinet. But we don't know the rest of the cabinet for the president right now. So,
and Ross stepping up to be president would be so perfect, because, like, you know, he could use this to, like, weaponize his argument of, like, he was pro Sokovia Accords. He's, like, pro against, like, trying to contain the Hulk and things like that, you know. So, like, moving towards, like, mutants and things like that, he can use this in his argument in the future of, like, hey, we need to go out and, you know, try and contain these people and catalog them and stuff like that.
Absolutely. I think exactly what you two have just said. I think, like we said, I think the president's going to be like, who are Skrulls? You know, Nick Fury's going to say, so the Skrulls have done this, and the president's going to be saying, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what Skrulls are. And he's genuinely going to not know.
he has to know something, though, because in that scene with him and Rhodey, they talked about Saber. So he has to know something. Maybe not know everything, but he has to know something, because the president is the one that said Saber, because he goes, I thought Fury was up on Saber or something like that, you know, in that scene in the White House. So he has to know something, but may not know everything.
Yeah, that's it. Well, I think you're right. The ineptitude of this president. The ineptitude of this president is going to cause Ross to like you said, Alex, to then sort of say, I've got, you know, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, I can protect America, or I can protect the world from these superpowered people and these imposters and all of this kind of stuff. And I think that's where we're going. And then he's going to kind of win an election based on that argument.
Do you also think, too, is that with what Alex said and Ross coming in and knowing about some of these things, that we could see possibly in the MCU that William Stryker gets tied to Ross, too, because Stryker is kind of the one with all the mutant side of things, that this could be a pathway for Stryker via Ross in the MCU, since we know our first official mutant is Kamala Khan in DODC, or do you think we'll see that Stryker comes up to the DODC maybe? And that comes into Ross as well. So we'll just see what they do between the DODC, if they start looking at the mutant registration stuff, if Stryker, if that's how he gets brought up through the MCU, all those different things. They could go a lot of ways with this. Even though we had Ursa Major teased in Black Widow, but that wasn't really anything other than the person. We really see the bear. So...
Yeah, and I feel like, you know, in Iron Man 3, they have that scene where the fake Mandarin refers to Rhodey as, like, the president's attack dog, you know, because he is like, you know, no one's going to save you, not your attack dog, like, no, you know, whatever, da-da-da. But, like, I honestly think that Rhodey, like, could totally just, you know, he could be that person for Ross where he's, like, the first line, you know, like, he's the hard, like, whatever, and then Ross could be Red Hulk and then have that in his back pocket too, you know? So, like, it would be very cool if you have something kind of going on there where Ross is kind of the very thing he's preaching against, you know?
Also, too, with the whole Rhodey thing in Ross, you remember when in Infinity War where he kind of said that's a court-martial and hung up on Ross, Secretary Ross. Do you think there's any bad blood there between Rhodey and Ross going forward the MCU?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. I don't think Ross will like him very much. I don't think he'll want him in the way. I think he'll sort of look at him as some sort of resistance against him.
Well, Rhodey was friends with Tony Stark, and Tony Stark was told by Ross at one point in, I think it was Civil War, that if it wasn't for, you know, some of the stuff he would have done, he'd be sitting in one of those cells just like the other people. Yeah. And like, it's so true because Tony's so reckless, but like Rhodey was friends with him, but he's also a military man, so he would respect Ross. So, like, and as a chain of command, he would respect Ross and he would probably do what Ross says. But at the same time, that's such a weird moment for Rhodey when he's just like, oh, yeah, I'm just going to ignore what Ross says and, just like treat him like friends. It's a very strange moment to me. And
It could be the first thing that Ross does when he gets in, out Rhodey.
Yeah, because you saw that in Civil War, he had the respect for the Accords. Rhodey did, right? He's the one they sent after them in the whole chase with Black Panther, Captain America, and Bucky. In that whole chase, he sent Rhodey there to say, now you're a criminal, Cap. To where we saw Infinity War, that's a court martial. So they could have kind of, I think after Rhodey got injured, in Civil War, maybe that was kind of, his kind of shift away, like, I'm gonna get away from this, or whatever Tony did with him after the injury and found out that the whole Bucky thing was fake, and he's like, not everything's what it seems, that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
I think one of the best, like, off-screen moments in the MCU is Cap breaking into the raft and saving everybody and Ross calling Tony and being like, Tony, we've got a problem. And he's like, oh, hang on, let me put you on hold. And he's like, I like to watch the line blink, and he just lets Cap break everybody out. It's so funny.
Jimmy Smith here via the chat from Facebook. We also have the potential Skrull in the DODC. Yep. So the female agent in Miss Marvel was very suspect because when the one agent that we saw, the male agent, says, we gave you access to this, blah, blah, blah. One of those two could be a Skrull, either the male or the female, because there was some very weird communication between those two and Miss Marvel. So definitely think there's a Skrull in the DODC.
There's got to be, hasn't there? And there was that little scene in the trailer where there was a DODC suitcase that was being put down on a table. Am I right in thinking that the Secret Invasion trailer? So could we see something there that they're playing a game to help them get this? It seems like what they said in Miss Marvel about, we haven't seen those powers before, and they were kind of collecting samples. That seems exactly down, what's been going on in Secret Invasion.
The Super Skrull,
yeah, the Super Skrull experiments that they're going through right now. So that does seem down that road, doesn't it?
RMC with us today. Looks like via YouTube. What's up, RMC?
Hey, how we doing? I think we've covered off a few things. I know I spoke about it briefly earlier, but just want to touch on again the scene with Fury and his wife.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw the past. We saw the past interaction with them there in 2012, shortly after the Avengers, the Battle of New York. So that was interesting, and they obviously, had a few lines there, but then brought that into the present day. And like I said before, I thought that was a fantastic scene between those two actors, and I thought it was delivered really well. I thought it was a really interesting finish to that scene. You didn't really know what had happened, who'd shot who, but yeah, I think it was nicely wrapped up, and I think that's the last we're going to see of her now. I don't think we'll see her again.
But
yeah,
go ahead, Alex.
I was just going to say, I really liked that scene because there's like a moment there where they have the flashback and then they have the moment where they both take the shot at each other. And he asks her, what's the deal? What's your backstory? Like, why did you choose to impersonate this person? So the whole time they've been together, he's never cared. He's never asked. He's never wanted to know. And it's almost like their lives before they really got to know each other kind of just didn't exist. And they chose to ignore like everything in the past. And then, she goes through and she explains like, I had to promise to bury her at sea. She was dying. I promised to like look after her parents like they were my own. And I promised I would never hurt you. And so they have that nice little like moment where they both like decide not to hurt each other out of respect for the life that they once had together. And then they go their separate ways. I just thought that was like such a great, like how they use that flashback to go back and forth to that, it was very good.
There was a lovely crescendo to that whole scene as well, though, wasn't it? It really worked its way nicely up. It was like a dance or a song, and it just finished and just such a nice moment. You was like, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? And then it sort of happened, and you're like, wait, the dust kind of settles, and then you're like, right, we found out. I think it was really well played.
But do you think that's the last we've seen of Varra/Priscilla? Do you think that she'll play anything going forward in this series? Because she definitely did not want to kill Fury, right? They wanted her to kill Fury. She definitely didn't want to do it. There seems like there's almost some redeeming thing that's going to happen between them two. Like either they get back together after this, or she sacrificed herself to save Fury. Because to me, the way that ended, it still seemed like it was unfinished, right? Especially when she asked him, but that question, I can't remember, she asked him exactly what he said, but he goes, "We'll never know now." "Oh, would you have loved me?" Yeah. Yeah. And he's like, "Well, we'll never know now." It's almost like that there's some kind of redeeming thing that's going to happen, and it's probably going to be her dying to save him. Or at the end or sometime in the future, we kind of see her back in the mix. I don't think it's the last we've seen of Priscilla/Vara in the MCU.
There's that one shot in the trailer too where everybody thought that Emilia Clarke was fighting with Monica too.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Because you see somebody with like similar hairstyle, like, and so maybe it's Priscilla.
Yeah.
Like, maybe it's not Monica. Like, I mean, that would be like maybe she comes back and helps Emilia Clarke, like, kind of, pull Fury out of the fire, kind of,
Yeah, I remember that now, Alex. You're right. Yeah, maybe Emilia Clarke's character now goes to Vara for help at that house. It looked like they was in a house, if I remember rightly from that trailer. It looked like it was in Vara's house, so that she could go there, and then Gravix find out that that's where they are. Gravix comes to Vara to kill her because she didn't kill Fury. Yeah, she didn't follow the orders, so he's come to kill her. And then obviously he realizes that Guy is there as well. Yeah, no, that's a good point, Alex. Well done, well remembered.
RMC via the YouTube chat. So he knew she was a Skrull, but kept human form when they were together, correct? Yep. And that makes sense too, why he walked back in the house, that she turned back into her human shell, because I guess that was probably the way they had it. Also too, we know that the longer they stay in that shell, the more they are that person, the less they're detectable too as well. So it could have been a number of reasons why that she didn't change back around him as well.
Lastly, before we move on, we're getting to that point where we need to wrap this Secret Invasion episode 4 conversation up. But we've now seen Gravik with Extremis, and we've now seen him with Groot's powers. So we haven't yet seen his kind of frost giant powers that he's going to have, and we haven't necessarily seen him with Cull Obsidian. I'm guessing that's his super strength, I guess. Don't know. But we haven't seen those two powers just yet. But we've seen how they're administered, because we saw that little flashback with Gaia. So, and obviously Gaia's got the Extremis power now. So it's interesting that it's very easy for the Skrulls to it seems quite easy for them to pick up these powers once they've got them.
Yeah. I mean, like, I feel like they have unstable genetic DNA because they're shapeshifters, so maybe it's easier for them to be able to like adapt and be able to change with these powers. But what I thought was the most interesting is when Gravik uses Groot's powers, his like the end of his hand actually turns into like roots, and I was like, so it's not really like him just like stretching, it's more of like he's actually like he's part plant there. It was very interesting, I thought. It was very different. Like, you actually see, I think, in one shot, like the leaves and stuff that like appear when he stretches out his hand. So I thought that was a very interesting kind of thing they did there.
I also wondered too if Gravik got all the powers at once, or they gradually keep adding powers to him, or are they changing the powers out? Can he have all 4 of the powers at once? Or does he have to actually go back to that machine to get something else? And just see how they do that, because we don't really see the extremity stuff again. We just saw the group powers.
Yeah, it's like load a power up for a specific reason. Yeah.
So I have a very strong feeling that he probably has all 4 that we probably saw in that machine, but we only have seen those 2 on display, because we'll probably see a 3rd one next episode and the 4th one in the final, and the 3rd one will probably be like Cull Obsidian super strength or something, and then the 4th one will be like the frost barriers and stuff like that, and it'll be like something like that. But yeah, like I just totally think that they've set themselves up to be able to stack basically as many powers as they want in a Skrull.
Yes.
Yeah.
From the Facebook chat, Jimmy Smith here. I wonder if they ever found out that final thing they want to collect. We haven't gone back to that.
I didn't know. When did they ask? When
it was, I think like an episode when they first, like 2, I think, when they first showed the doctors, 2 or 3, that they're working on something. They were trying to find something else. But yeah, that's a good question. Yeah.
Okay, so 2 episodes left. The penultimate episode next week. Usually, generally speaking, episode 4 is always a great one. We said that last week. Episode 5 is kind of, I often find, or not episode 5 necessarily, but the penultimate episode of a season is usually where you get these kind of big moments, these great, big, huge things happen. And then we get the finale where it's kind of, it all gets tied up in a nice little bow. So I'm expecting big things this time next week when we have a chat about episode 5. Are we happy?
One last thing real quick. The more this series goes on, the more I'm getting excited about Armor Wars, because Rhodey, especially when we find out the scroll angle to this whole thing with Rhodey, and definitely I have a feeling that he was not around for Stark's death. He is going to wake up and just go ham when he wakes up. So I'm even more excited for Armor Wars every time I see this, and I cannot wait to see more Rhodey on screen for the MCU. I'm glad that he's the one playing James Rhodes in the MCU now.
Yeah. The other day I was sitting here thinking to myself, like, man, like what powers will the Skrulls like not be able to have? And I was like, oh, I guess they wouldn't be able to have gamma radiation or become like Hulk versions of themselves because they're immune to radiation. So I was like, I guess that kind of like makes sense why they're not like going after like Hulk abilities or something like that, So I mean, it'd be kind of interesting though if we ever saw like that situation where the leader turns like a section of the world into gamma monsters or something. Technically you could send in Skrulls, I guess, and Skrulls would be like able to fight that battle for you. So maybe we see something in Brave New World or something where like some Skrulls are helping out with some gamma stuff or something. You never know.
Which would make sense why they got Cull Obsidian for that piece and not trying to get Hulk or Abomination.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, good point.
MC says on here, from the YouTube chat, I think I'm going to use YouTube from now on. A ton better cast of the TV. LOL. Go for it.
Nice. We're up in his big screen. Love it.
Yeah.
Okay. Shall we move on to some news and rumors?
Yeah. So the biggest news right now is beginning of the week, the SAG-AFTRA prepared for Hollywood to strike. And they tried to seek federal remediation. So Hollywood CEOs and insiders were trying to seek federal mediation to help avert a strike, but the studios and streamers reportedly had no intention of negotiating with the Writers Guild for several more months, which also led into the SAG strike. So now the SAG-AFTRA is officially on strike with the Writers Guild. It sounds like the studio and streamers in-game is to allow things to drag on until union members start losing their apartments and losing their houses. A studio executive told Deadline. So this is the first time in 60 years that both actors and writers were on strike.
So I saw something earlier on, and it was I think it was posted to the group, but I think I saw it before it was posted to the group, and it was saying that one of the things, I don't know how true this is, one of the things that studios or production companies are sort of trying to push is that a background actor can do one day's work, get paid for that one day's work. The studio can take an image of that person and then use AI forever to fill in that actor's work. I mean, if that's the case, that is just preposterous. There's no way that can't be allowed to happen.
Yeah, the biggest things I'm seeing out there is AI and residuals for streaming services.
Yeah, I mean, like, I was kind of talking about this the other day, but I was like, imagine, like, I'm going to use, like, Indiana Jones as an example, but imagine they make an Indiana Jones 6 where they pass the torch on to somebody else, and they, like, Harrison Ford can't do that for whatever reason, so they just use, like, stuff from all the previous Harrison Ford movies and put, like, a fake Harrison Ford in there and have some, like, AI dialogue that speaks, that makes something for him, and it's just, like, him quickly passing the torch to somebody else in the beginning of the movie. Like, that would be really weird, but they could totally do that kind of stuff if they allowed, them to just use AI to do stuff. So I could totally see some issue with that.
Have you seen, have either of you seen Black Mirror, you Black Mirror fans?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I haven't seen the new season yet.
Not yet.
Right, okay. Go and watch Joan is Awful. Just go and watch Joan is Awful. It's the first episode of the new season, and if anybody's watching and you haven't seen it, go watch Joan is Awful and you'll understand where people are at.
Well, also too, that earlier season episode with what's her name? Captain Carter actress Haley Atwell.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, where her husband passed away, and then it was like the messages. Yeah, and the whole thing. So they could do that too as well. Reminding you of that, just talking about this. But there was that one project we're talking about, Alex, in the one chat where for some reason the actors said they all went and got scans one day. They don't know why. Before they're, I can't remember what movie it was. On set, they made all the actors get scanned, and they weren't sure why. They just did it, and now they're saying that that's why they got scanned, was because of the whole AI deepfake stuff.
Yeah, I don't remember what that was. But the other weird thing that I'm thinking about too, in addition to all this, was it goes back to that like thing with Teddy Sears being like, "Oh, I'm not in the Flash movie, so me being in the Flash movie, like that totally looks like Teddy Sears in that." He wasn't like filmed, but they kind of just like put a face on this and made this kind of like person. It looks just like him. Everybody, like even Scoopers, came out and were like, "Oh, Teddy Sears is in this movie," and he was like, "I am." Like it was very interesting to see, like. And I think that's kind of like where we're heading is like you almost have the ability as a movie industry to be like, oh, well, it's really close to them, but it's not exactly them. So is it really them? And then it's like at a certain point, if you're using their likeness so much, like, come on.
Seriously,
Like,
go watch Joan is Awful. Even if you just do that as soon as we come, so just go watch it. And it's so weird. Like it's just what's happening. It's just this is what's happening.
RMC here via YouTube chat says, I understand the way behind it, but I hate it. Or the why behind it, but I hate it. I'm in the Carpenters Union myself, so I'm pro-union and pro-employee, but this one's going to drag for a while. He also says, better get used to reruns. So yeah, so speaking of that, right now, the only 2024 completed project is Ironheart. So 2023 projects are okay, so Loki's still to go. Captain Marvel is still the Marvels are still a go, and so is Echo right now for the 2023 projects. Right now, outside of Ironheart, everything else is pretty much on hold. So Blade, Daredevil Born Again, Deadpool 3, Thunderbolts, Wonder Man, and Venom 3 are all shut down right now.
Wow.
Also too, San Diego Comic-Con panels, celebs are also backing out due to the strike. Actor Brian Cox, who plays Stryker in the Fox X-Men series, and in the first ones, he says, he breaks down the reasons for Hollywood actor strike. He says, streaming services are not providing adequate residual payments to actors and successfully streamed shows. And then Marvel released a statement. So in a joint statement from Kevin Feige and Louis D'Esposito, they said, we recognize how much you've all done on your specific projects, and it's disappointing when carefully laid plans have to shift, but constant change is the nature of the production business, and our teams are no stranger to unexpected challenges and rising to meet them. We deeply appreciate all your efforts to make the best of the situation, and we can all hope that a new agreement will be finalized soon so we can resume the agreement we have in process. So it sounds like they're in favor of something happening, but they didn't really have anything concrete about their statement. It was kind of an ambiguous statement there saying, we're for you. We want to get back to work. We hope something happens. So,
somebody else do something about it.
Yeah, but people are going after Disney right now, though. Well, especially Bob Iger, because he's made some statements about stuff, and I'll get to that in a little bit. Before I get that, though, Fran Drescher came out too, was just going off about what this, because like the head of the studio is saying, let them suffer, while we're getting all these big paychecks, and not pay them. And so she had some very harsh statements to say of it. So did Ron Perlman, who plays Hellboy in the early movies. Also in the late movies, he has said some harsh words too about losing the houses and apartments and that kind of stuff. And he had a whole commerce statement. So the actors are not happy. And this is like, the unstoppable force versus the immovable object right now, it seems like. Deadpool 3, there's a big rumor going around, and at first I didn't believe this rumor, but then I started seeing the usual suspects scoopers start picking this up. It's rumored to feature a massive fight scene between a variant of Wanda Maximoff from either 616 or 838 and Famke Janssen's version of Jean Grey. So I don't know, maybe that with, I could see this would be interesting. It's probably going to be 616 Wanda. It's probably going to be 838 Famke Janssen since she killed Professor X. Mm-hmm. I don't know why 838 would be the big fight, because 838 didn't seem like she had powers at all in Multiverse of Madness. Yeah. Not
much, did she?
Yeah. Unless she figures out that, but it sounds like it's going to be 616 Wanda versus 838 Jean Grey.
Unless like Wanda's 838 version had the chaos magic and just never used the Darkhold, and
Yeah, true.
and just like was minding her own business and wasn't really a threat to anybody. And then after she, slaughters the Illuminati with somebody else at the wheel, like controlling that, maybe she's like trying to get to the 616 to, get to that Wanda or something, and ends up in the X-Men universe or something. That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
So,
Black Panther, some Marvel games at EA, latest studio Cliffhanger Games announced a new original third-person single-player Black Panther title in development.
Yeah, I was talking about this the other day. I was just wondering what sort of style of game this will be. I'm a big sort of fan of the games like Red Dead Redemption that I can really get kind of lost in, and just a really good character story as well. So I'm wondering whether it'll be along those lines. Fingers crossed it will, because if it will, I'll get lost in that one.
Yeah, I saw somebody was saying this was made by the people who made the Shadow of Mordor game, and I don't know how good that's gonna be, to be honest, because like for me personally, like I bought that game and returned it like within, I don't know, a few days. Like it was like, I didn't have it a week, because I was like, I can't stand this game. Like it's just like it was weird for me, the gameplay and stuff like that. So I hope that doesn't impact that game. This is what I'm ultimately saying.
From RMC, back on the whole Scarlet Witch, Phoenix / Jean Grey fight. He says, sounds exciting, but I bet it doesn't last long. Yeah, who think would win that fight?
It depends, doesn't it? It depends what Jean's got.
Yeah.
If Jean's got the Phoenix, I feel like the Phoenix would probably win that.
Yeah.
Because the Phoenix is like, I mean, you got chaos magic that's powered by Chthon, maybe in the MCU, and then the Phoenix, which is the Phoenix Force, which is like, just the OP, like so.
Yeah, that's a bit. I think that's a deciding factor, isn't it? If she's got the Phoenix Force, then she should win that, really. But if she hasn't, it's got to go the other way, isn't it?
So
maybe it's just a depowered fight, and they're just going to punch each other.
So RMC thinks of Scarlet Witch, but are we going to see them send like a Wolverine variant to stop this fight, and similar to The Last Stand, where he has to go kill her and you see the skin coming off and healing? Are we going to see a similar scene to that? Or it'd be interesting too, what if we saw Scarlet Witch pop up at that moment in time in it as part of this whole thing, and go back to that scene when he has to kill Jean to stop her from going ham on everybody.
Yeah, I'm not sure what I believe here. I'm not sure if I believe that Elizabeth Olsen's going to turn up in this movie or not. I mean, how much budget have they got for this one movie?
It's Ryan Reynolds. Yeah, it's Ryan Reynolds, man. He attracts everybody.
Yeah. I mean, like, think about this. Like, they could totally have a scene. Like, I know there was a rumor for Magneto in this movie, like, at one point, like, being mentioned. But, like, imagine, like, Scarlet Witch and Jean Grey start to fight, and then Magneto shows up, and he's like, daughter to Wanda. And she's like, what? And then that would just be like, what? Like, then that would, like, it would be like one of those things. We had Patrick Stewart in 838, and then Magneto could have been her father.
Yeah, that's true.
That would be very cool.
That's true. Is this? Somebody said this the other day in the group. I think it might have been Cassie. Are we going down the multiverse of madness route, where we all just got like lost our minds and just thought that everything was going to happen? I don't know. Maybe. What's next? Someone's going to say something ridiculous next. I'm sure of it. Eric.
So yeah. So RMC via YouTube chat says to follow up on a Scarlet Witch in thinking winning. Reality warping. So,
yeah.
Haley Atwell's making the rounds since she's in Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning. So she talked about on having her husband removed from Civil War. I remember when I was filming it, the prop master had put framed photography on Peggy's bedside, Peggy with her husband and her children, and Louis D'Esposito ran over just before we started rolling. Gonna take that out. We don't know yet. We don't want to limit ourselves by kind of suggesting this is who she's married. And so that was taken out. And I thought, okay, that's really interesting. So it looks like they were going to go a different path. And they said, well, we don't know how things are going to end, but it worked out in the end because what happened at the end of Endgame. So,
yeah. I was just talking about Mission Impossible. I've been rewatching with me and my son. I've rewatched the first 3. And just forget how good the first one is. The first one is such a really cool movie. It really is. It's a really good Mission Impossible movie. Second one's a bit naff. It gets a little bit sort of slow motion fights, and it's very John Woo. You know, it's exactly what you'd expect a John Woo movie to look like, and it's exactly what you get. And then the third one, it starts picking up again and picking up pace. And I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of Mission Impossible movies. I've got to admit, I am a big fan of them. So yeah, looking forward to this new one.
She also talked about her frustrations on her role in Multiverse of Madness.
Heard about this?
Yeah, she's like, I could do this all day, and then followed by she's immediately cut in half by a frisbee, and the audience being like, she can't do it all day. Apparently you can't. So yeah, egg on your face. And I'm like, oh, it doesn't really serve Peggy very well. So
I mean, it doesn't really serve anybody well in that scene. I mean, Wanda slaughters them all. Like, you know, like even Captain Marvel, like she stomps that version of Captain Marvel like into the ground. Like, you know,
I think that was very needed, that scene. I'm sure somebody said it. I don't think it was me. It might have been one of you two guys, but somebody said that was needed, like for her to take down those people to just to show everybody how powerful she is.
I mean, I think, you know, in the whole thing with Reed Richards, that was like the dumbest line. You know, with the, you know, he just basically tells his allies biggest strength away, and she's like, you know,
it doesn't matter though. She can read minds. So
yeah,
like,
true.
She literally probably already knew what they were all thinking, what they were going to do. That's why she just takes Reed and just lifts him up and just turns him into spaghetti. You know, like Black Bolt, you can't talk now. Like, you know, like she just wipes the floor with him. Like no effort really whatsoever.
But still, that line bothered me, and I don't know if Captain Marvel was have to kill in that scene or if she was just knocked out, because you just saw her hand open. That's all you saw. You didn't really see anything underneath that. So, you know, and plus she got her before she went cosmic, I guess, or binary, whatever they call it. And RMC via YouTube chat, he says, "LOL, I saw that. She's got a point, but I love the scene." I agree with Andy. It was necessary just to show that how big of a threat we're dealing with. But that whole thing, but it's like he could have said anything or done something else. It's like they almost made Reed seem like Captain Obvious in that situation. It was my main thing there.
I think the hardest to believe for me out of that was when she like easily overpowered Professor X with, you know, like their mental game, that mental war. Like I felt like that should have been like probably like a 2 or 3 minute fight scene. Like
it should have been a little bit harder for her.
Yeah, like it was just like he's just trying to help that Wanda from 838 out from underneath the rubble, and then like the real Wanda from the 616 like comes in and just like breaks his neck and kills him, and it's like, oh, okay, like, you know, like, all right, like it was just so quick, like she just ran through everybody.
Yeah, I mean, for, you know, like another thing, back to Jean, he actually helped her contain that, walk it away. You know, he could have done more against Wanda, and that I agree.
Yeah.
Anson Mount did say he had some talks to come back as Black Bolt. He says, if the answer was yes, I wouldn't be able to tell you, but the answer is no, so I can. I've had some informal conversations with the powers at Marvel. It's a conversation, but they've got their current phase they need to do. So this goes back.
That's not really saying that they're not going to have him back. It's just said that they're not going to have him back now.
Yeah, he also says, I don't know, we'll see. I'll let her jump back into the Cal and do it again. I love Black Bolt as a character. And honestly, he's fine. Bring Anson Mount back. You know, I think he redeemed himself in Multiverse of Madness. If you haven't seen the Star Trek series, Strange New World, I think it is, that I watch, he is great on that show. If they don't bring him back as Black Bolt, make it Reed Richards even, if you can't find one. I just want to see him back in the MCU.
I mean, he looks like Black Bolt, right? Like he doesn't say any lines because he's Black Bolt, so I can't really like say like his acting was like too quality and you know, like so
actually, but he had the look. He, you know, it was
the look was great. I thought the look was brilliant. It really did work well.
That one scene was redeeming for that terrible Inhuman show.
Oh, yeah, so bad. That show was so bad.
And the I'm sorry as well in the scene that we saw, the flashback to where when he killed Strange. That was brilliant.
Yep.
That I loved how they utilized his powers in that scene, because like, and that was another weird twist in that movie for me, is I'm like, okay, so these, like this Illuminati, they stomped Thanos into the ground, and then Wanda comes in here and cleans their clocks in about 30 seconds. Like, okay, like that was just like a weird kind of moment, like in my head, you know?
They totally underestimated her as well, though. They already said that they underestimated when they were sitting up on the thing when Strange first went in. They said, "Oh, you will take care of your little witch problem or something like that." So they totally underestimated.
RMC, the YouTube chat has more things about Captain Carter. He says it was just one universe, Captain Carter, though plenty more. And then he goes, sounds like the door is still open. I liked him as Black Bolt. So yeah, and they could even bring them back in during the next phase. And we have it could just be the next phase. Everyone keeps talking about the mutant saga or the X saga. Make it mutants and then humans, make other species. So I don't know.
I rewatched an episode of a couple of episodes of Game of Thrones yesterday with Jamie. If Jamie's still watching, what's the guy's name that plays that Ramsay Bolton, who plays Maximus in that terrible Inhumans show? And he's really good. He's really good. I'd like to see him back as Maximus as well. If they got better material and they got better production, I think they could make that work.
And plus they're still trying to get the cast for Fantastic Four. I'm sure there's some kind of ideas for a script, but they're not too far in the script. They could even make Inhumans come back in Fantastic Four. Inhumans were introduced in Fantastic Four in the comics, right? So do the whole thing. They had that whole thing with Atlian, that kind of stuff. Johnny fell in love with Crystal. They could do that whole thing for the Fantastic Four movie as well and do Inhumans that route.
Well,
they could be trapped. They could be trapped in Atlian right now.
Didn't Marvel have that group called the Frightful Four that was like kind of like a knockoff of the Fantastic Four, but they were villains, and I think Medusa was like a part of that at one time, like back before she was changed into an Inhuman. I think she may have been retconned or something long time ago.
But RMC from the chat here says make Inhumans mutants easy. they're making Kamala Khan and mutants. Want to make the rest of Inhumans and mutants. Jimmy Smith says Iwan Ryan. So in RMC to follow up with his make Inhumans mutants, he says been saying that for a year now, which I have some news about that, by the way, too. Here coming up. So back to Bob Iger, who's been making some weird comments about stuff. He's probably needs to be quiet right now during the strike. But he's to stay running Disney until 2026. He was supposed to exit again next year, but now he's staying at 2026. He made some comments about diluted focus due to Marvel's recent output. He says there's been some disappointments. We've had some. We would have liked some of our more recent releases to perform better. It's reflective, not as a problem from a personal perspective, but I think in our zeal to basically grow our content significantly to serve mostly our streaming offerings, we ended up taxing our people way beyond in terms of their time and their focus. Way beyond where they had been. Marvel's a great example of that. They had not been in the TV business at any significant level. Not only did they increase their movie output, but they ended up making a number of television series, and frankly, it diluted the focus and attention. That is, I think, more of the cause of anything. Now, I think that's kind of a weird statement because Disney Plus pretty much is making bank, and think of what happened with the pandemic and having that platform to be able to... Yeah, basically it did save them. Having that platform to do things. Yeah, they can probably tighten some things up. Do we need certain projects or can they do some things? But what has really been a flop for on the MCU side?
I mean, like I saw them talking not too long ago and they're saying that Disney Plus still isn't technically profitable yet. And, like the thing is like whenever you're moving towards that with the streaming services is like you have to work, I feel like, to get that profitable. They're still trying to add more people. I get that they're making bank, but there's a ton of money involved in this. And they just put $200 million over in just Secret Invasion alone. Like, that doesn't talk about shows like Echo or Ironheart or Covenant of Chaos and stuff like that.
If you look at their subscriptions, they've got something like 150 million subscriptions across the world or something stupid like that. And if they're all paying, even if they're paying $5 each, that's $600 million a month.
Yeah.
It's... And they're, it's going to be that's every month. So, I don't know the ins and outs of it, but it's a lot of money. Like you said, it's a lot of money.
Yeah, and I mean, like, take Disney with like this new Indiana Jones movie. That movie had like a $300 million budget. I think it had like $150 million in marketing. So they got like $450 million in it, and this movie still hasn't crossed over $300 million yet, like in theaters, and it's been out for I think like over 2 weeks now or something like that. Like that's not really like I feel like where they want to be on something.
But that's non-Marvel though. So I feel like I feel like their misses. Yeah, I feel like their misses are more outside of Marvel. Yeah, Marvel's part of Disney, so it's going to be kind of underneath that. But their misses have mainly been outside of Marvel. Yeah, Quantumania could have done better, but it still did. I think it still covered its nut though, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think Shang-Chi has been one of the best movies out of Phase 4 and Phase 5, and I think that movie didn't make over $500 million. I think it made $400 and some million. I actually think Quantumania did better than that movie. I may be wrong, but I think it did better than that movie in theaters. But I actually like Shang-Chi better than Quantumania,
But also, too, Shang-Chi was like the first movie pandemic-wise, right? Because before that was Black Widow, and Black Widow was direct to streaming, because wasn't Black Widow then Shang-Chi in the movie theater?
Black Widow was in theaters.
It was, but you got the option to pay for it to get it right away on Disney Plus. That was the main difference there. So you were still with Shang-Chi, you were still in that pandemic phase though too. So I really don't count some of those movies because people weren't going into the movie theaters, right? They were kind of still staying home. You were still building that back up. So
I mean, Black Widow still almost made $400 million.
Was that movie theater, or was that the extra price you'll pay to watch on Disney Plus from home though? Because they had that initial release on Disney Plus,
and that was a lot of the argument that Scarlett Johansson had, wasn't it?
Yeah,
and there was that complete sort of misunderstanding of where the money was coming from and how they were gaining money. But two things, it still strikes me as just incredible timing about the streaming, the sort of the birth of streaming services and the explosion of streaming services and what happened in the world at that time. Do you know what I mean? Like, by the way, nobody's allowed out of their home. Oh, and also, by the way, there's these streaming services like Netflix has really gained traction now. Here's Prime that's really gained traction. Oh, and here's another new one as well, Disney. You can stay at home and watch all this stuff now, and you're not allowed out of your home. And you're like, oh, okay, great, thanks. Like that's a coincidence.
Well, I think
conspiracy theorists.
I think the confusion that all these streaming services have is that everybody's going to buy and use all the streaming services at the same time. Like, we live in an age where people use only a few streaming services and cancel the other ones. So, like, I don't have Netflix right now. I haven't had Netflix in months. That's why I haven't watched Black Mirror. It's because, like, I'm going to wait till there's a few things on Netflix that I want to watch, and then I'm going to and go binge it and then be done with it.
Yep.
But like I've got other things that I'm watching, HBO, Hulu, like stuff like that right now. So I'm not going to with Disney, like I would totally do this with Disney, but we have our podcast, we come on here and we talk about it and stuff like that. So it's like, yeah, I'm a year-long subscriber now, but like if this weren't the case, like then I would totally probably binge a lot of this stuff and cancel it and come back and cancel it and come back. And that's where I think the streaming services are really struggling right now, is the streaming services all across the board. There is so many streaming services out there right now. Like, you have so many opportunities to go watch 8, 9, 10 different other streaming services.
So from the YouTube chat, RMC says, I love the honesty. He also says it's genuine. And he says, I'm referring to him admitting overtaxing people and departments. Yes, I agree with that too, because they had the influx of what do we do? And they probably didn't expand their pool of resources to help cover that, and they're probably working people to the bone. We saw the things with the VFX industry, other things, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I agree. That part, he's probably spot on, where they were probably stretching themselves thin when it comes to resources to make these projects. But that's where you can kind of look at that, evaluate, and course correct. Because like Andy said, you're making $600 million a month. I don't know how Disney Plus is not profitable at this point if you're making $600 million a month. I know the whole Hulu thing and how that, goes into the whole thing with Hulu and their deal. And there's been talks about things changing with Hulu or them selling off the Hulu stake to come back to Comcast and them doing more on their own. But still, $600 million a month plus what you're getting from the box office for these films. I don't think there's an issue with Disney's coming in to be able to, one, get more resources, two, pay these people better for making these projects and helping them be as profitable as they can be, because you're seeing these CEOs and these industry or these studio heads getting all kinds of money, all kinds of payouts, but the people downhill, it's not trickling down to them.
And it probably needs to be more parity across the board, doesn't there? The people that are the hands on set and the staff on the production, they need to be paid more in line with everyone else. Sorry, Alex.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, and I was just looking at a Deadline article from February of this year, and Bob Iger's talking about that he expected Disney Plus to be profitable by the fiscal year of 2024. So,
Which they're probably already in the fiscal year of 2024 because usually the fiscal year is ahead of the calendar year. So
It's amazing that it's taken that long to get profitable. But
I wonder how. I still wonder how though.
Where's all that money going?
Yeah, it's like
somewhere, isn't it?
Are they money laundered or something? I don't know. Where's all that money going?
I agree with RMC's company.
Yeah. Business as usual from RMC via YouTube.
Yeah. One last thing. Just talking about numbers, because Alex brought up about Shang-Chi not earning a great deal at the box office. You've only got to look at movies like Shawshank Redemption. Quite widely accepted as one of the best movies of all time. Agree or disagree with that is irrelevant at this point, but he's widely, touted as one of the greatest movies ever. Terrible box office. Absolutely ludicrously small amount of money.
But that wasn't the blockbuster age. Everybody thinks that every movie now should make $1 billion.
Yeah,
and it's just not going to. It's just not going to.
Because if you think a lot of those cult films today did not do well in the box office, they did well like streaming or DVD, that kind of stuff, but not in the movie theater. So
remember those.
So RMC, I didn't read your comment here because this one's next. About Miss Marvel paving the way for humans to be retconned as mutants. So Miss Marvel, so right now in the comic she's dead, or this last series she's dead as an Inhuman. But there's a new comic being written on Miss Marvel, and guess who's helped writing that comic?
Iman Vellani.
Yep, our own Kamala Khan and the MC herself, Iman Vellani. So this comic, following the death of Miss Marvel, she will co-write the new comic alongside Miss Marvel TV writer Sabir Pirzada. Carlos Gomez and Adam Gorm will handle the art, and Sarah Pacelli will provide the main covers. The title will be Miss Marvel, the New Mutant. So there you go. She's being reborn in the comics to reflect her MCU as a mutant. Remember, the original writers wanted her to be a mutant, but they made her an Inhuman instead. Miss Marvel TV series changed that, and now they're actually reflecting the comics to be that as well.
Yeah, interesting. It's the old adage, isn't it? Nobody stays dead in the comics except Uncle Ben.
Yeah. Uncle Ben's back on the table, boys. No, I'm just kidding.
It's a canon point. Let's be honest. He's always got to die.
More Miss Marvel news. Miss Marvel is headed to broadcast TV. ABC will air all 6 episodes of the Disney Plus original series in August. The first 3 will air on August 5th, and the last 3 episodes will air on August 12th from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern Pacific each night.
That's interesting. Has that happened with other Marvel shows over in the States?
I don't think so. But also, too...
what show was this?
Miss Marvel.
Miss Marvel, okay.
But also, too, they did this... Remember, though, in other countries, they did... I think, like in Pakistan, I believe it was, they showed this in the movie theater. They kind of did a similar format for it as well.
Yeah.
So I wonder if this is them selling some things off to other things, but Miss Marvel just got nominated for a bunch of Emmy nominations too as well. And so maybe they're trying to increase that footprint, especially with the comic coming out. And so much. And RMC goes, how much did Disney make of that deal? I have no clue, because I thought ABC...
That's what's going to make them profitable in 2024.
Yeah, but also too, I believe ABC is the same family as ESPN, that kind of stuff. Which, if you buy that package between Disney, ESPN, and Hulu, you get that whole package together. So there may be some kind of deal with that through ABC. I'll double check that one. So, we have some Superman news on the DC news. Superman Legacy, Edie Gathegi has been cast as Mr. Terrific. And if you know who that is, he played Darwin in X-Men First Class. He also played Laurent in Twilight as well, which I didn't know until this weekend. My wife was watching a marathon of Twilight, and I was like, wait a minute, that guy looks familiar. It's like, why does he look so familiar? Isabel Merced as Cass Hargor, Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner, Green Lantern, Anthony Kerrigan cast as Metamorpho, And then James Gunn on the new Green Lantern show, he said the Green Lantern show is not separate. Nate will play Guy in all parts of the DCU. So there you go.
Interesting. There was a new Blue Beetle trailer out, wasn't there, this week as well?
Yes.
That looks. I'm really excited for that movie. It looks fun.
Yeah, there's a great scene I've seen from it where like he gets knocked through a wall of a building and falls out, and then like the wings come out on the suit and he just flies right back up to the hole and is just hovering, standing there like kind of talking trash for like kind of like a moment kind of type of thing. Like, what is going on? Like, you know, I think that movie's gonna do great, and I feel like anything that they do with it is probably gonna be kind of like an added bonus because this movie was originally supposed to go to HBO. It was never really supposed to be in theaters, but I mean, they still spent, I think, $100 million making this movie. So
I wondered too, since he's the first DCU character, if any kind of post-credit scenes are going to tie us into the new DCU.
I don't know. I feel like they should totally set up like a combo between him and Booster Gold because they're giving Booster Gold that TV show supposedly in Chapter 1. And it would just be great to have Blue Beetle and a Booster Gold kind of like team up where he meets him and they go about through the TV show and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I know it's not Ted Kord, but I think it would be okay. You know.
So when we see Chris Pratt in the post-credit scene, Blue Beetle, if we're going crazy,
I actually think like him as Booster Gold would be more perfect than him as Star-Lord, to be honest. I mean, like it's basically Star-Lord from the future.
Yeah,
is kind of how Booster Gold is. So, you know,
we were talking about Indiana Jones earlier and talking about Chris Pratt now, and I was saying to my son the other day, I don't understand why they didn't just, when they had the chance, just James Bond Indiana Jones and just use a different actor. And I think Chris Pratt would be good as Indiana Jones as well. So
all they do is play himself from Jurassic Park, and he had it down.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there you go.
Give him a whip. Give him a whip.
Why studios can't just treat us more like adults in those situations? You just go. You do realise that, you know, Sean Connery can't play James Bond for 60 years. So let's just cast somebody else and don't worry about it. Just carry on watching these stories. You know.
Well, and the other thing, too, is with that Crystal Skull movie, they make you think that they are passing the torch to his son in that, you know, and you kind of were like, oh, are we going to get Shia LaBeouf as Indiana Jones? And then I've heard that they've kind of like written that character out of like the new movie.
I'm not surprised. I mean, he's a bit troubled, isn't he, Shia LaBeouf?
Yeah.
Our receiver YouTube chat says, I agree with Alex that high hopes for his new DC. So... Emmy nominations, I'm not going to list them all, but some of the series out there between Marvel and video games and other things have gotten nominations. So Andor has gotten some nominations. Prey, because Predator is now Marvel Comics, so Prey has gotten some. Obi-Wan has gotten some. The Last of Us, Miss Marvel. So in some of these people got like several for some of these things. Like Last of Us got a lot instead of Miss Marvel, multiple. And then Prey got multiple as well. So I think Andor also got multiple.
That final episode of Andor, that moment, the Rick's Road was just so good. It was just so good. That whole march, the funeral march, and the ending to that was just absolutely brilliant. And obviously the speech that was given, you know, the hologram speech, just brilliant. Absolutely loved that episode. Might going to rewatch that again after. Yeah, I'm going to just rewatch it again after this.
So I haven't seen it yet, so I'm going to probably go binge it.
Oh man,
it's fine. You're not gonna.
No, I'm not.
Yeah,
don't watch it. That's going to be great. You're going to love it. You're honestly going to love it. It's great.
I love spoilers here.
I read so much crap for all the new stuff I do, so it's. But RMC says lots of good ones. Well does the right think on nominations. The last piece of news I have for today is on Beetlejuice 2. Felipe Cates has joined the cast.
Who's Felipe Cates?
No idea.
Oh.
I'm looking up real quick though.
Yeah, look him up. Look him up while we're just tying up this last episode. What was I going to say? So next week we've got episode 5 of Secret Invasion. I'm looking forward to that one. I think that's going to be a great episode. I think it's going to reveal more. I think we've got more reveals left. I don't think we're done with these revelations. I think we're going to get some more revelations in this series before the final episode. and then we've got a bit of a cult of, obviously we've got episode 6, but then we've got very small sort of break, haven't we, between now and the sort of fall, where we're going to get quite a lot of content. I was looking at this the other day. There's Craven, yeah, all right, okay, let's not all laugh together at once. But there's Craven, but then we've got Loki, we've got Echo, we've got the Marvels, we've got quite a lot of things coming out at the end of, or sort of towards the end of this year. So we're going to be busy come the end of the summer and the beginning of the autumn time. So I'm looking forward to it. We're just going to be cracking out episodes, new content all the time. Going to be fun. Who is this person, Joe?
Sounds like he is a up and coming actor. Have been in a few things. I'm trying to see. I keep seeing Phoebe Cates come up. There's no relation there, is there? Because she's coming up in my search when I do this. But I don't think so. But I don't know why she's coming up in the search when I search for Felipe.
Up and coming.
Yeah, so up and coming actor sounds like. So has been in a few things.
And there's a great comment there to finish the episode.
Oh, RMC via the YouTube chat. Jarian is the spoiler guy in the chair. LOL. Yeah. I put a slide on our other chat there, our spoiler chat that we have. So,
right. Okay. Let's tie this one up then, guys. It's been another good episode. Jarian, where can I guess?
You can catch the live stream on YouTube, on Twitch, on Twitter, on Trovo, on Kick, on our Facebook page and our Facebook groups. If you want to be involved in the chats, we can only see the chats. We can see the chats for everything but Kick and but Twitter. So if you want to be involved in the chat, make your way over to the other ones. And then also we have our Instagram, our Threads, and our TikTok, which I gotta start getting back on again. I keep saying it.
On Threads. We're on Threads. We're on the new one.
Yep. It's the same account. So everything's Comics Evolved except for except for TikTok and Instagram /Threads. It's Comic Evolved because that handle's already taken. But yeah, we do have the Deadpool stream from earlier this week that'll be out tonight about the Deadpool 3 movie, and then I should have this done tonight / tomorrow morning as well.
Nice. Good job, guys. It's been a pleasure. We'll catch you next week. Take care.
Have a good one.
See ya.